Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to I think it's the second to the last session at JupyterCon 2023. It's my pleasure to welcome Gabriela Vives here on the stage to talk about UX of computational thinking. Can we have a round of applause for Gabriela, and I will let her have the stage. Thank you.
So hello, welcome everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the UX of computational thinking. So from the Jupyter Notebook to JupyterLab, then an example of how we included the UX of glue, so presented yesterday by Alisa to you, into JupyterLab. And then I'll end with some talks about how we can improve the UX of JupyterLab altogether. So I do design and research at QuantStack. I've been working there for the past year. I've been working on projects like JupyterLab, CondaForge, Glue, Binder, JupyterHub. QuantStack, you probably might have heard of it in other conferences, is a software consulting business in Paris with core developers in multiple data science and open source communities like Jupyter. They do a lot of package management also. So first, I just want to give you an overall of what is user experience so that we all are talking the same language. So user experience is a big umbrella underneath where there are several things below it. So there's research, so people who are doing like understanding users, understanding their pain points, their needs, they're doing UX research. People who are doing usability testing, so they're going to iterate a lot on their prototypes to try and understand how to create a user-centered design and not just take their own choices. People who do interaction design are thinking about more in a macro point of view, how do users interact with a digital product? And it could be anything, like even a vendor machine is a digital product. Interface design is a bit more micro into the components, designing each component, creating libraries, and then the visual design, like the typography, the colors, the icons. So all this together creates the user experience people have when interacting with a product. And what we often hear about is the names of the job titles that go with these, but they do also a bit overlap. So you often hear about UX research, UX design, UI design. Are there any of these in the room? Oh, yeah, 3. And so this is probably what you've been used to hearing, like a UX researcher, designer, or UI designer. So how can we translate this into JupyterLab? UX research, we've been doing a lot of continuous UX audit. You can use it to understand the needs when you want a new feature, like if you want to put a new plugin or an extension, understand what problems it's really solving. And so that's part of UX research for Jupyter. Discovering needs of new users, for example, like astronomers may not have the same needs as data scientists in Jupyter. So we can do user research to understand what are their specific user needs and pain points. For UX design, we can do wireframes, quick iterations, usability tests, do information architecture, understand when you have a new feature, where is it going to fit in the interface, and what will be the interactions. And then UI design to create design systems, the icons, typography, and fonts inside Jupyter and unify all that. So now that we've had a sort of the basis of what is user experience, we're going to talk a bit about what was in the beginning the challenges for computational notebooks in Jupyter, so the Jupyter notebooks. The Jupyter notebooks were a binding of software for narration and software for code. And so we're taking two completely different user experiences and trying to make one user experience. How do you do that so that in a seamless way and do you just add both user experiences and it works, or does it need a bit more work to create a new one? What we can see is that, well, Jupyter Notebooks have worked quite well and are used by a lot of people, especially in education. And so why does it work so well in education? Well, for children, for example, probably because they learn by trial and error and they love storytelling, so Jupyter Notebooks reflect exactly that. The code is in a narration and isn't just one big block. The same for teachers and students. Teachers, well, they want to tell a story to teach what they have to give to the students, and students want to know where the information is coming from and where they're going, and so Jupyter Notebooks also work well with that. But it also came with a lot of challenges because users had really strong habits either in code editors or in like writing documents in Word. They were used to it and had habits, and so when you give them something that's the combination of both, well, they have high expectations to find everything they were used to in both into one. And so that, combined with all the technical implications, creates a lot of user experience challenges, like having correct features for correcting spelling, for example, but on what you've written and also on the code, and they're two different technical things, but a user expects them to be the same as they were in the code editor and in a Word document, for example. And so when JupyterLab came along, it brought another level of user experience challenge onto this, which is that it's an open framework application. So, which means that instead of most websites, we look at them and you've got people all around who are going to use this website, and the goal of the user experience is to bring these people into one particular point. So like e-commerce is a very easy thing to understand. They all want people to go to the shopping cart and pay. So it's bringing everyone into the same place. Whereas JupyterLab is everyone just goes somewhere else. But we don't exactly know where they're going to go. And so there's more than 10 personas, and that have hundreds of workflows. And all this is always growing because people are adding extensions and plugins, and new people like astronomers are coming into JupyterLab. So how does JupyterLab, how can, from a user experience point of view, how can you manage that, the fact that you don't have people just going from A to B, or you don't even have a finite number of workflows, and you can't control them? Well, this is a lot like the desktop applications that we know, like photo editing, development, CAD tools. They often do the same thing. They allow exploration and creation. But, well, sometimes we feel like it's a bit like there's been just features put one on top of the other in these applications. There isn't a real thought into, is it going to help my users do this kind of workflow or not? And you often go there to do one tiny thing, but you end up in your toolbar with 90 other things that you will never use. So, for example, here, would anyone be able to name the 4 screenshots here? Okay. Does anybody feel familiar with these screenshots? Does it feel just like something you would feel familiar with? Yes? No? Because, so this is just screenshots from applications like Figma, FreeCAD, Archicad, and Lightroom, but they all have something in common, which is they follow the same mental model that users have with this software, is like having a file management, having property editors, having a really rich toolbar, having like big menus, being able to customize your layout, your tiles. And all this, JupyterLab did a really good job in understanding it and following the same mental models that people had with these applications and did it in JupyterLab. And so JupyterLab has quite a good user experience with that because people using it that were used to other software could easily, intuitively use JupyterLab. And so now we've got the challenge of, so we know this is quite well done and has a good user experience, but what happens when we try and take another desktop application and sort of drag and drop it into JupyterLab? What happens with the user experience? And here I'll give you the example of Glue that you, if you were here yesterday morning, you heard Alisa talk about. So how do we take Glue and put it into JupyterLab and make it feel like a seamless user experience? And not what we don't want to make it look like is this, like putting oil in water, but you can still feel that it's not meant to, there's something weird about it. You want it more to feel like this. So I'll just quickly present Glue for if there were people who weren't there yesterday morning. So it's an open source Python package used to explore relationships within and between the related data sets. It's used on astronomy data. It was used first for astronomy data, and now it's used for medical and biology data. The Glue users, their main workflow and the thing that we're trying to put into JupyterLab is they import data sets, they create visualizations with them, then they link the data, so in these data sets, they take the attributes and they link them. They say like, lat in this one is the same as latitude in this one, please make them link. And then they're going to explore the data and do all the open-ended exploration and creation I was talking about earlier. So this is what users do in Glue, and we were thinking about how can we allow them to do this in JupyterLab with a user experience that seems natural and not just like a Glue plugin into JupyterLab. So first we did some research, understanding the Glue users, without at all thinking about JupyterLab, just completely Glue, trying out their software, understanding why did they build it, why do they need to link data, and then we thought about JupyterLab, how does this connect to JupyterLab? So this is just a quick video of this is the Glue desktop software, so you import your data sets and you create visualizations with them. So you can create as many graphs as you want. You can put several data sets into a same graph, and one data set can serve for several graphs also. And so once you've got all your visualizations, you can link the data. So here it opens a modal where you have on the top the data sets. So you can see you've got your 4 data sets, you select the ones you want to link together. Here you have the attributes, and you're going to say, well, lat here is the same as latitude, please glue them together. And when you've done that, then you can select interactively your plots, and you'll see the selection propagate into the other plots. So once we had understood that and that workflow, we started creating prototypes. So there was a lot of iterations in this prototype. This is sort of the last prototype that was created that I'll show. So it's completely done on Figma and nothing's coded. So the prototype of what we thought it would be like in JupyterLab. So this is a workflow where we imagined that the user already had created a session in Glue Jupyter, had already some files, and just wanted to open an existing file. So they would look for a Glue file, open it, and here they would see the visualizations that they had already created in Jupyter. So I don't know here if you notice there are 2 tabs, but I only opened 1 session. So basically, for Glue users, it's really important for them to work with several tabs. But in JupyterLab, 1 tab is 1 file. So for the moment, I'll just remember that for later. So this is the prototype where you had several tabs and all in the same session, and you could see all your views, you could link data here. And so then we went on to development. And did the first iteration with, so my colleagues at Constack developed this. So this is the real thing in JupyterLab. As you can see, it's a tiny bit different because it was actually, it didn't make sense technically to have several tabs for 1 session. So what we did is 1 tab is a session, but there's small tabs on the bottom. Oh, it's hidden by small tabs on the bottom that reflect the different tabs that the Glue users needed in their session. So it's an example of how when you confront the UX with technical solutions, the consensus you get. And it's actually even, I think, better for the user experience, and it meets the Glue users' needs. So after we did the first development, now it's just time for iterations. And while the development of the first version is ongoing, we can continue to prototype the second version and iterate on the users before we develop the second version. So this is like an example of how we can proceed and how you could proceed to put anything into JupyterLab, any other software and use case, and think of it not just as something for data scientists, but actually biology, astronomers, anyone can use it and put the tools inside it and create a seamless user experience. Now I'd like to just quickly go over how we could continue to improve the user experience of JupyterLab. So the features I was talking about at the beginning that like all the desktop applications had, that JupyterLab managed quite well, but we can continue to use user UX, research design, and UI design to continuously improve everything we're doing in JupyterLab. So in research, we could start having issues created for specifically for UX research. If you have a use case where you want to take time to research about the users before actually creating an extension or something, it can become an issue in GitHub. Also, maybe have more tags for UX in the JupyterLab GitHub, because right now there's only 1. But so you never know whether the issue is something to do with UX, with UI, with research. You also never know if someone is working on it from a UX perspective. So you can't, it's not never assigned to a designer, so it's only assigned amongst the developers. Usability testing, we can use it when there's an issue that's conflicting and there's no consensus, even on small things, instead of sort of guessing which one we would like to implement. When you have new features you'd like to put in, extensions or plugins, to understand like how are the best interactions going to be. And also, just for continuous improvement, you can always just do a usability test on whatever small part of the application. And there's always things to improve from a user experience point of view. And so for the interaction design, it's the same. When you put in a new feature, understand where is it going to fit, and not just add it as if we're just adding features one on top of the other. Create a component library so that if you want to create, you need a pop-up, for example, a modal, well, that there's a clear library and you know where to go and get it, and so we don't end up with same features that look and feel differently inside JupyterLab. And the same for a design system and icon library. Well, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Gabriela. We have time. Hello, hello. Don't know why its microphone's not working. So it's working now? Hello? Yeah, okay. So we have time for questions, and I'll bring the microphone to you. Questions?
So thank you for the presentation. So do you have any idea how to make JupyterLab easier to use for new users? Because I observed that new users that are starting to learn, for example, Python, they prefer Jupyter Notebook with the classic view, and JupyterLab, you have a lot of buttons, and they are a little bit scared when they are starting. So do you have any idea how to make the experience better for new users?
Is there like a tutorial, a home tour on JupyterLab? I don't know. No? Yes? But, well, the first, I would say, what I've seen a lot is like a simplified version for the first time you open the application, and have a home tour or something that guides you through an easy workflow. But I don't know if that is somewhere, if it exists, is it in a place that's easily findable by a new user? That's more of the question. And otherwise, I think we need to research, like why, we need to understand why they find it difficult to be able to solve it. Like why do they switch to the notebook, and why does it scare them? Try to really understand the pain points and then try to solve them. Because just like that, no, I don't know.
Hi, thank you for the fantastic talk. I've got two questions. I'm sorry, two questions. Maybe they're short. The first is, roughly how long did the whole process take from like your research phase right through to implementation development phase? And also, what was the hardest thing doing design in this like ecosystem? Like what challenges were particularly difficult, or have you got advice for designers doing design in scientific software?
Okay, so your first question was how long did it take for the glue research phase? I think it was about 2 months from beginning to end, from beginning to the final prototype and the handoff to the developers. And your second question was, what's hard about doing design? I mean, for that project or an open source?
Any projects that, you can either choose Glue or a different project.
Well, I think what's sort of hard and easy at the time, it's a bit weird, but it's like interacting with users, because in open source, well, the whole community, the users that are easy to get access to are often the people who also are contributing and developing. And so they are great users, but they often have a bias of being in the community. And it's a bit hard to go and fetch the people outside of the community, but that are still huge users, like in companies or in education. And I'm sure there's loads, but it's not as easy. So I think maybe that, and thanks.
We have a last question here.
That's actually not a question. Thank you, Gabriela, for the presentation. I just wanted to say that there is indeed a JupyterLab Tour extension. Okay. It may just need an update. Probably it has not been updated for some time. But it exists.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabriela, for your presentation. And please give a second round of applause for Gabriela.
Thank you.